All right. Well, I think it's time. I think it's time to get things kicked off. I think it's time to let things get rolling here. I know Rick will admit people as they arrive for the rest of this conversation. But first, I wanted to thank you on behalf of our DEIA team, Rejess and myself, Eli, here over in recruiting. This is Press Start. This is our initiative to reach different communities, and this is our Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we are very, very excited to talk with you today. And this talk will, of course, be on YouTube for future viewing, so you can reference it in the past. You're going to have some exciting things that our team share from their experience in game development. So first off, I want to share the agenda. We're going to do some introductions. We're going to meet Iron Galaxy, the company. We're going to have a developer panel where we ask some questions. We're going to give you some help to get hired, and we're also going to have a little bit of Q&A time towards the end. So let's go ahead and jump right into things. Chaohao, if you would not mind giving us a brief introduction.
Hello, hello. My name is Chaohao Wang, and I am a software engineer at Iron Galaxy, and I am based in Orlando, Florida. I have been at IG for about 3 years now, so a little bit short from 3 years, but yeah, been here for a little bit, and have been enjoying it since. And my favorite food is Korean barbecue. There's some great restaurants in Orlando that serves great Korean barbecue. And like I always bring my friends to Korean barbecue, like whenever they visit as well. And favorite games are Overwatch and Persona 5. I spent way too much time playing Overwatch. I have like 800 something hours on Overwatch. Did I say Persona 5 for the first time? Anyway, I'm a Zenyatta main, so yeah. And fun fact, I am a orange belt in judo. I have been doing judo for about a year now. One of my best friends, she's a black belt in judo. She got me into it. So yeah, and I also use he him pronouns.
Fantastic. You'll have to give me some recommendations for Bagogi spots the next time I visit the Orlando studio because
Oh yeah,
Bagogi is near and dear to my heart. Big Bagogi fan over here.
there are some great bulgogi places in Orlando for sure.
Awesome. Let's kick it over to Keenan. Keenan, please introduce yourself.
Yo, what's up? I'm Keenan. I'm the community and social media manager here at Iron Galaxy. My favorite food, it says Jamaican, but I don't remember saying that. And I haven't had that much Jamaican food, but now I'm very curious and want to try more Jamaican food. If I were to think about what my favorite foods are, it's probably pizza. My dad thinks that preference in food is basic, but you know what? Pizza, you can do anything with pizza. And there's so many different kinds of pizza. I am a very stereotypical Chicagoan, I guess you could say. Favorite games, Rumbleverse, Persona 5 2. Haha, hey there, Chow How. I have to play Persona 5 Royal sometime soon. I'll make time for it eventually. League, I've been playing that game since like I don't know, like 2014, almost a decade. That's crazy. And then Smash Bros. Ultimate. When I was trying to get more of my persona fix in being Joker, I was like, what other games can I pretend to be Joker? And I was like, wait, Joker's in Smash Ultimate? So that's Joker's my main in Smash. And then fun fact, I'm the proud father. I'm gonna read this because it's so detailed. I'm a proud father of an almost 1-year-old daughter who is 25% Chinese, 25% Korean, 12.5% Polish, 12.5% Yugoslavian, 12.5% Puerto Rican, 6.25% Irish, 6.25% Scottish. Huge mouthful. This is all according to my family, not 23andMe. I don't even want to go over those results because it's ridiculous. And then, yeah, that's my daughter. She's about to turn 1 on Monday.
Congratulations. What a detailed breakdown. I also love the little like face, the smiley face that we got there.
But she has no teeth yet.
Yeah. Great, great stuff there. Let's go to our next panelist. Let's introduce the fantastic, the wonderful Shaker.
Hello. Hey, I am Shekhar Dhupelia. I had a strategy. 100% Indian. Nothing. Also, Keenan, I have to say, I wasn't always vegetarian, so Jamaican jerk chicken, like you gotta, try more of it. I promise you.
I will.
So yeah, so favorite food, breakfast. It's kind of like pizza. You can't go wrong. It works any time of day. You never get tired of it, right? Favorite games, this is a tough one for me, right? Like I can think of a million games I love, and this is just like I thought of a few the first time I was asked this and wrote them down. But honestly, we could do 5 slides on Shaker's favorite games, and make that a whole Zoom one day. But like I should have Rumbleverse in here. I play a ton of Fortnite duos right now with my 11-year-old. She can sit on her Switch on the couch next to me, and I'm on the PlayStation, and it works so well. We each get our own screen, but we're like together in the same room, co-oping at this. It's great. So I could probably think of a million games here. I don't know why I'm missing Spider-Man and Miles Morales. So it goes on and on. And maybe I'll get a chance to talk about this in a later section, but yeah, a fun fact is my first gaming system was the Atari 2600 in 1981, and I go by he, him. Thanks.
Awesome. Let's kick it on over to our next panelist here, Rejess, if you just want to give a quick introduction there.
Yeah, I'm the one that likes to making food, so
So
I
I'm
feel
going
like I
out to eat with
failed.
you, Rejess.
Yeah, I feel like I failed you, Keenan. I'm gonna have to find you some spots in Chicago.
Please.
I like Monopoly. I feel like I'm a outlier here because I really love Monopoly, all versions. And then NBA 2K. Yeah, anything 2K, sign me up. Fun fact, I'm a DJ, so that's what I do on the weekends. And my pronouns are she, her.
Sweet. I will round out the group. Rejess, I can't play as my Boston Celtics right now in the 2K games because they would lose any game that I played with them. But I am our recruiting manager here at Iron Galaxy. Been at the company for about 2.5 years now. I love Hawaiian barbecue. I love tacos as well. If you mix them both together, I might have my favorite thing on the planet. Big fan of JRPGs like Chrono Trigger and the Final Fantasy series, but Super Mario RPG is my favorite one of those of all time. I worked on an indie game starring a jerk cloud called Rain on Your Parade. Incredibly silly title. And my pronouns are he, him. So now you've learned a little bit about the people who are going to be answering questions and speaking to you today. I want to tell you a little bit more about Iron Galaxy, the studio. So we're one of the world's largest independent developers. We have 270 plus team members. We've shipped 60 plus titles with 20 plus partners. And that's just so much games. 15 years of creation in Chicago, Nashville, Orlando, and we'll have a studio presence sometime soon or in the future in Austin, Texas as well. So we're all over the world. We're making all kinds of great games. But these are the reasons why people pick Iron Galaxy time and time again. First off, it's our project variety. In 2022, we worked on 10 games across 12 platforms. You name it, we've shipped it. First-person shooters, role-playing games, MMOs, and more. We work in Unreal, Unity, and custom game engines. I think people really appreciate the variety of projects they can do here, not just in genre, but in engine and in language. And there's just so much excitement around that. You could land your dream job in games and work on the same thing for 3 to 7 years. And that could be your favorite project. But at the end of the day, you might not learn as much or grow as much as you might here at Iron Galaxy. All of that project variety leads to a ton of stability and a great work-life balance. But let's jump into that work-life balance. We ask our employees here for their best 8 hours a day to equal their 40-hour work week. We have generous paid time off and vacation plans. You get sick days, you get mental health days. At a base level, it's 36 days, including 12 that you earn, 14 holidays, 5 sick days, 4 mental health days, a volunteer day. A part of those vacation days, there's a birthday day. I spent my birthday days these last few years. Let's see, I played Horizon Forbidden West for my previous birthday 2 years ago, and then this birthday I played Destiny Lightfall. So I have kind of a track record of every February a great game comes out, and I get to use birthday PTO, take that Friday off, and game all weekend with my pals, which is totally fun. We also, the work-life balance, it's not just in the time that you're away, it's also in the things that happen in your life. We treat adults like adults here and professionals like professionals at Iron Galaxy. So we do have hybrid options. Those days that you're in office hybrid, they don't have to be the same days, they don't have to be the same times. We understand that life happens. So we do have those flexible start times too, and we have plenty of inclusive benefits. If you check out our pages through our website, we have plenty of tons of information about all the different benefits we offer you and the perks too of working at Iron Galaxy. Last thing I want to touch on who we are as a company is our stability. We I said before, right? We shipped those, 60 plus titles with 20 plus partners, and we've actually been around, for almost 15 years now. And in that time, we've had 0 layoffs. All of those projects, that leads to the stability and the work-life balance I'm mentioning to you. Many game studios, when they announce a new place, they say, hey, we have 88 combined years of experience. There are 32 team members of that 270 that I mentioned to you that have 10 plus years of service at Iron Galaxy alone. We are an extremely veteran team that has a lot of experience and know-how in games. And I think, the projects that I'm going to mention to you, the games that you see, that stability that we have and the wonderful projects we've had the honor of being a part of, it's so great to have some of the biggest companies on the planet trust Iron Galaxy to be a part of shipping their amazing titles. So lots of stability here at Iron Galaxy. It's rare in tech to not have layoffs. It's rarer in games to not have layoffs. And in 15 years now of existing, we've had 0 layoffs. We haven't had to send someone home because we couldn't pay them. But if you don't believe my words, here's our accolades. We've won plenty of awards. In fact, the best places to work from gamesindustry.biz, you actually have to have more than 90% of your employees say that it's a great place to work. And we were one of 3 companies among companies with more than 250 employees, the large companies, to win this award in 2022. So thank you to them, and thank you to all the places that recognize, and our employees here that recognize this is a great place to work as well, because they're surveyed and they're the ones that say this information. But I've said enough about the things that are not games. You might be here at this talk to learn about games. So Iron Galaxy is known for our ports, our remasters, our co-development, our support work, and our full game development. Let's take a look first at some of our port projects, things like Spyro, Crash, Skyrim, Street Fighter, Borderlands, and of course, porting Uncharted 4 to PC. Some of our support work would be things like Destiny, BioShock Infinite, Fallout, Overwatch, Diablo, working with Nintendo on Metroid Prime Remaster, doing support work there. And codev, I really can't say much about that. It's all private, NDA, top secret, all of that. I don't want to lose my job today, but I will tell you, these are some of the platforms that co-development may or may not be happening on. These are the things that our teams are working on in the past and likely in the future too. And of course, we're well known for full game development on things like Dive Kick, Killer Instinct. People always talk to us about that. And of course, Rumbleverse, our Brawler Royale. We love Rumbleverse. It's a fantastic game. All right. So you heard about us and our titles. Now it's time to hear a little bit about our teams and what we're doing here day to day at the studio. I want to kick things off with the key man, Keenan. Would you mind telling me what your path to games was?
Sure. So in my mid-20s, I had a little bit of a mid-20s crisis. I was working in sales and logistics, and while I gained a lot of invaluable experience there, I had learned that that wasn't necessarily the route I wanted to continue down with my life at that point. And I thought about a lot about what I spent my free time / my breaks at work doing, and it was surfing Reddit, thinking about video games, socializing with game communities, uh, trying to talk with friends on Discord. And I was like, okay, I love video games. How can I figure this out? I had a conversation with my family and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and I said, hey, I'm interested in working in video games. I don't know how I'm going to figure that out, but would you be open to supporting me if I took a step back from my role at the time and basically just did a bunch of research to see what potential options are there. I studied communications in college, and I did a bunch of research, watched a lot of YouTube videos, networked, tried to secure any local game related work I could. I worked at this place called the Night Gaming Lounge in the Chicago Skokie Land area. I made my own Discord community where I kind of used that as my experience to organize and assist and serve a community as my experience to try to grow towards being a community manager. I worked an internship at a place called the United States Esports Association. And then I worked at GameStop. That was my last stop before I arrived at Iron Galaxy. But in between there was plenty of applying, a lot of non-responses, a lot of almost made it. But unfortunately, Iron Galaxy gave me a shot, and I'm so thankful for it because I'm very happy here.
You know, Keenan, I'm hearing a lot of like you had to kind of make it happen for yourself, but you also had to take that leap of faith.
Right.
And you know, just for the folks watching this now and in the future, right? Like, you do have to make it happen for yourself, right? I don't know if many people experience gaming coming to knock on their door, being like, "Hello, welcome." You know, make these games now. But I really love hearing that, Keenan. I wanted to go to Shaker next, about your path into game, Shaker. So if you wouldn't mind jumping in.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you talked about that just now, Eli, because I think there's definitely yeah, I definitely share that experience of like no one's going to hand it to you. You have to kind of chase it and push and um you know, even if you're not sure, you got to just keep trying and like, you know, keep knocking at that door and keep figuring out what's your inroad. And so, you know, I definitely can empathize with that approach. You know, so I'm fortunate that I'm fortunate that I grew up in a house where I had a dad who was super interested in tech and technology and having like the latest gadgets around the house. You know, it's a uh you know, my like I said earlier, my first, you know, I got my first game console as a birthday present. It was an Atari 2600, you know, and it was right as the stuff was coming home and you could play this stuff. And it's because my dad thought all this stuff was cool and didn't know how it worked, but like you know, he was a physician by trade, but he saw all this tech and found it very interesting. And you know, he saw me playing stuff at the pizza place at 5 years old and was like, "Oh, it'd be cool to have this stuff at home." And so, so I was fortunate to grow up around that stuff. And so I think that helped me always have an aptitude around technology and have an interest in it and be comfortable where a lot of people were uncomfortable in my generation still. And then, you know, I think fast forward a few years, again, I can credit my dad for he got really interested in like, okay, now people are getting home computers for the first time. And so this is like the early days of Apple, for example. And so he decides, oh, maybe I'll automate all my files and all my patient records from the doctor's office, the small family practice he had. And I'm going to get an IBM PCXT was the machine it was called. And it was black and green monochrome screen. And like the thing was like this huge heavy metal brick you know, sitting on a desk with this heavy monitor, this heavy little monitor sitting on top. And you know, as you would expect of that generation, he had a really tough time with it and never really figured out how to do the things that he imagined he could do with it. You know, but meanwhile, I'm like this like 9-year-old or something, and I'm learning how to use like the spreadsheet software that he had bought and like the little database software he bought. And I found in the library a how to program in BASIC programming language book, and you know, at like 10 or something like that, and checked it out. And so then he comes home and finds me like making a little text-based game and figuring out how to like get user input and like spawn off and make decision trees based upon what players are doing. And so so I never looked back and always sort of had that. So then I go off to college. I got accepted at DePaul here in Chicago, and computer science was still a very new, like not even at every college yet, sort of field at the time. And so my parents weren't convinced that was a good path. And so since they were, you know, involved in the decisions at that point in my life, for sure, they talked me into like, I don't know, are there gonna be jobs in that? Maybe you should do like accounting. Like, so I started off as an accounting major, my first quarter at DePaul. So I took a couple liberal arts classes, and took an intro to accounting class. So I remember having intro to accounting and like philosophy or something like on the same day, 3 days a week. And what a wacky pair. And I had a mind for it. It's funny because I still use some of those skills today, but I could tell it wasn't like my passion either. Whereas like I made a couple friends that were like in their intro to programming classes, and I was like, well, that's what I should have done. That sounds so much more interesting. And so that I marched into the registrar's office and talked to the guidance counselor, and you know, about 8 weeks into college, and said, yeah, I'm going to switch to comp sci for next quarter. And so I remember second quarter had intro to programming in C, and I loved it. Like, it was just like, I never looked back. I said, okay, I'm definitely on the path. I'm going to stay in tech. Always wanted to be in games. Once I was done at DePaul, there weren't a lot of opportunities in Chicago, and I really was trying my best to stay local. I hadn't even thought about living anywhere else. But there just weren't a lot of opportunities. You know, the big company nearby was called Midway Games at the time, the legendary, you know, of Mortal Kombat and Blitz and NBA Jam and all those games. And but I didn't know how to get into that because, of course, you know, an undergrad at the time, you're not going to learn like graphics and rendering and physics and all this stuff that you could perhaps learn now. So I was working on websites, doing a lot of like server backend database, things like that, tech. And that ended up actually being my backdoor into the industry, was because after 3-4 years of doing web dev, I got an opportunity to join Sony out in the San Diego office, where they were just released the PlayStation 2 back then, and we're going to sell this network adapter that was going to bolt onto the back of the PS2 and add an Ethernet jack and a modem jack and a hard drive and let games work online. So they needed a tech team to like build APIs and build game servers and matchmaking servers and chat servers and all this stuff that they didn't know how to do because they'd been making all these single player games for the PlayStation 1. And none of these PS2 devs knew how to do it either, because they were building all these story-based games and not multiplayer. And so they needed help. So that was kind of my back door. I was like, okay, I'm not coming in the traditional tech skills, but hey, I happen to have learned some stuff along the way that's applicable. And so
Nice.
so I don't begrudge the like start in a different industry, because
Yeah.
it helped me sort of kick in the door eventually, you know, and then the rest is history.
Well, and I also think too that I think there's a lot of people who go down a path, or let's say that they do get a game design degree, right, and then they go into testing in other fields, you know, or quality assurance, right, or they go into other things. But I've seen plenty of applicants that have come through Iron Galaxy that came from defense or financial tech and things like that. So if it's your passion, keep chasing it, keep going after it. I really love hearing, you know, your pops kind of inspiring you, but then also almost stopping you from going into the game path too. It's like those parallel paths. Shout out to dads, they're amazing. You know, Keenan, you're a new pops there, but you know, hopefully one day you are also putting the controller in your child's hand and you know, giving them that pathway.
I've already been asking Shekhar tips of how to even trait parenting. So
Love it, love it. Now, I want to go to Chaohao next for your path into games. I'd love to hear about it. Please share.
Hello. It's relatively a straightforward one, actually. So I knew I wanted to go in tech when I started college. So I started off as a computer engineering major. And then as I go along with that, I realized I didn't like hardware that much. So like after a year, I switched to CS right away, because I just don't like dealing with hardware, and like it's a lot of handling stuff that I don't like. I just rather like sit in front of the computer and like code and stuff. And then I actually had a few internships in non-game related field. So the first one was related to like natural language processing and stuff. I actually did a cool project where I like analyzed emoji usage on like social media and stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then the second one is web dev. So similar experience there with Shekhar. And I think it was my either junior or senior year, I took a class with Dr. Tom Carbone, which is who's the general manager of Iron Galaxy at the time. So he was teaching AI in game programming class. So that's my first introduction to like programming in games. And after that class, I was like, oh wow, this is like something that I want to do instead of like the previous internships that I've had. So from there, I just kept digging into it, and then I went to FIA, which is the UCF, which is a game development program at UCF. So I went to FIA and then got my master's in interactive entertainment, and then I went to IG afterwards. So yeah.
So you don't regret leaving the emojis behind, leaving the web dev behind? You appreciate your past choice?
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate them. I don't regret them. It's still great experience that I get to like tell people that I did something cool with like emojis and stuff. So
Of course.
yeah.
I was gonna ask, like, in all that emoji work, what was the so would you know like the most used emoji at that time? Was that something you were
Yes,
tracking down?
actually. Yeah.
What was it?
I mean, depends on what events are happening.
Oh, cool. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Because at the time, because we were working with UCF actually, so like during like graduation like season, you would see a lot of like, you know, graduation
Claps,
caps.
prayer hands.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like celebration
Cool.
emojis, you see them a lot.
Love
so
it. I love that.
yeah.
I love that. Well, man, now my brain's firing about all these emoji questions, but I promise I will get the conversation back to some amazing things. In fact, Rejess, would you tell everyone watching your path to games?
Yeah, I mean, my path was actually pretty simple. I didn't know I wanted to work in games, but I knew I wanted to do diversity, equity, and inclusion work.
Mhm.
And so, in my path to create more equitable workspaces, I think everybody deserves a place to come to work where they feel safe, where they feel valued, and they're able to, just exist authentically and not have to worry about, negativity from the outside. So, I wanted to be a part of creating that solution. And so, in my job search, post graduate school, I found Iron Galaxy and kind of found a home here.
I love it. And I'll quickly highlight my pathway because we both worked in insurance in previous lives for Jess. I did, everything from food services to retail to conventions to entertainment. And to get into games, I had to make it happen for myself, just kind of like Keenan did. I volunteered on a bunch of indie game projects doing social media management, which led to doing that as paid work part-time on an indie title as it released, and then that's what led me to AAA work and getting on Iron Galaxy's radar. So the path was I volunteered, I did it for free for a while. I don't recommend that. I think you should get paid for your amazing skills and talents, but I volunteered, and then I got some part-time work, and then that led to full-time work. So you can have pathways to make it happen for yourself. Iron Galaxy kind of first got on my radar because of some of our leadership team. Even when I was applying, when I saw that our co-CEO was Adam Boyce, someone who I had seen on E3 stages and who I had just a an excitement for, or just like felt like it's someone who you could just high five and you would feel good about it. When I saw Adam was at Iron Galaxy, that did excite me a little bit more. I was like, oh, if Adam's there, like maybe I need to kind of dive a little bit deeper. So that's how I heard about Iron Galaxy. Chow, how I know that for you it would have been through FIA, so they almost kind of maybe voluntold you to come to Iron Galaxy. But had you heard about the studio before going to FIA?
Well, obviously, I heard it from Tom's class. He would talk about like his experience at Iron Galaxy. So that's I think that's my first experience hearing about Iron Galaxy, and like I just it was in the back of my mind. And then after I started at FIA, it was like, okay, that seems like a cool company to work for. So as I know, as I learn more about it, it seems more like a cool company. So.
Okay, well, hey, I'll take any positive review. Keenan, how'd you first hear about IG?
So I think I know how, but I'm not completely sure because as it appeared in my life where I was just shooting my resume everywhere. I was like, please, 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 in all these different spaces. But
Yeah.
if I were to guess and think about, and maybe Eli, you can confirm this later on, I think I spotted it on the Built in Chicago page, which is funny because we're working on building that out now. But I think I was just searching up like video game jobs in Chicago. And
Mm.
the only thing I was running into initially was like NetherRealm, and I had applied to work there as well. But Iron Galaxy wasn't immediately popping up in the search results. And then I found Built in Chicago, which is another website. And then I searched video game jobs in Chicago on that site. And then IG popped up. And then it was just one of the many places that I had applied to. So when I got the call or email back, I was like, who is Iron Galaxy? Because I was like applying so much in so many different spaces. And I was like, oh, wait, this is a really cool video game company. I need to do my research because I want this job.
I I will reach out to our built-in reps and say thank you for featuring us in that top 10 game companies in Illinois or whatever article, because
There
that's how
you
we
go.
landed Keenan. I love hearing
It's
it.
probably, yeah.
Shaker, how did you first hear about Iron Galaxy? I suspect, but please share with the audience.
Yeah, mine's a weird one because I've known of it since it was founded. So I worked with our founder Dave and our co-CEO Adam and some of our other department heads when we were all a part of the old Midway games I'd mentioned earlier in Chicago. So this is going back to the 2000s. So a bunch of us were friends and worked together. And as I think the company was shrinking and we kind of thought Midway was on the way out, a lot of us started leaving and going our different ways. But a lot of us that stayed around the Chicago area kind of just kept in touch, or we stayed friends, or we run into each other from time to time. And so I think there have been a couple like I'll call it flirtations with maybe joining on at some point over the years. I think I got pretty close to joining on like a decade ago, and it wasn't the right fit and right time for me in my life. But we talked a couple of times about what it looked like if I joined. So I was always sort of tracking and aware and knowing what they were up to and talking to friends here at the company. And so 4.5 years ago, something like that, I think about 4 years ago, I remember calling up our co-CEO Adam Boyes and saying, hey, you've asked what would it be like? What would you think about joining on? He said, yeah. I said, what do you think about right now? And somehow 6 weeks later, I started at Iron Galaxy. So that's my story.
I love that so much, that like the long road, but like just keeping those relationships going. And that's something that I think that I just want to spotlight real quick, that is really valuable to the folks that are in game schools right now. Let's say you don't get that first job. The job market, is kind of crazy right now, right? But if you don't get that first job, keep those connections going. Keep talking to the folks that are a part of your capstones and are a part of your graduating class, and they might have opportunities for you down the line. Now, that's not the only reason to stay in contact with them, right? You could do game jams together. There's other reasons, because these lifelong friendships oftentimes can lead to, you never know, maybe you all end up at all different studios across the planet, but you could all maybe meet up together down the road, having learned so much, and then making a studio that, really helps and supports everyone after you've learned all those lessons. So I love that, Shekhar. Long winding path. But a good one. In fact, Shekhar, I want to stay with you real quick here. Do you have any advice that maybe you've learned now that you would have given yourself first when you were beginning, or when you were coming into games?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks. I think I don't think I necessarily want to answer talking about, like, let's say a skill,
Yeah,
or like a
yeah.
technology or something like that, or a tool. Like, I think more it's like I think more it's an action, which is, I think, listening, like keep listening, keep hearing, keep asking good questions, and then listening for the answer, and be patient with yourself. I think uh I think that skill, I definitely was much more of a know-it-all, 20 years ago than I am today, and where I don't think I know anything anymore. And but so it's like I'd get pretty impatient and want people to do things my way, and I wasn't really hearing always, like, oh, this is the way I want to build this feature. This is the way I think this should work, or this is the way I think this meeting should go, or this is why, and I was always like kind of thinking the people tasking me or the people working around me didn't know what they were talking about, but it's like they're all, I think, like we've just heard so far already, a lot of people are coming at this, even people coming here today are all coming from very different backgrounds and perspectives and angles and different vectors into the same place, and so I think we all bring with us different perspectives and stories. And so I think just listening is a skill I've learned and gotten better at, hopefully, over the years, and just kind of like absorbing and deciding what's my next move based upon that, versus just sort of like gut instinct all the time and just acting. It's like a little more just like, okay, slow down. I don't need to do so much. Let me like hear people out and then think about what makes the most sense.
Yeah, no. Someone I think told me a very long time ago, and this is probably advice that's been passed down through the ages, but are you listening to respond, or are you listening to understand? And I think that that's a really valid point around listening, because when you listen to respond, you oftentimes don't understand what people are looking for, where they're coming from. But when you take that beat that you're describing, you pause and you kind of internalize it, maybe you can come up with better solutions, or come up with something that everyone benefits from, versus just that quick fire answer. And I'm oftentimes speedy, so I could learn that pausing and that breaking too. Chaohao, next I wanted to go to you around the advice piece. Are there any things that you've learned now that you might have, wish you could have, told yourself, said that little note in the mail back to you in the past?
I would say one important thing, well, as a programmer, I would say it's very important to learn how to learn as the piece of advice, because there's always going to be new technology in the industry. Like, it's not even just for programming, for art and design, there's always new stuff that you can learn. There's new like ways to create art. There's new things that you can design about. There's always something new that's out there. So
Yeah.
find your learning habits and see how you can learn find ways that you can learn the best, and like try to adapt to a new environment. I would say that is a very important skill to have in the industry.
Yeah, yeah, I could not agree more. Learning how to learn. That's super great.
Yep.
I might steal that if you're okay with it. I don't know
Yeah,
if you put the
absolutely.
TM on it. Cool, great, great, great. I'll share that with folks. Let's pivot into some things that we enjoy, some things that made us smile. Keenan, do you have anything you can share that brought you some excitement or joy recently about working here at Iron Galaxy?
Yeah, sure. Recently, select devs, or I guess certain team members participated in a game jam recently.
Mm.
And that was a really cool experience because I've never directly developed games. Like the sector I am working in at IG is community and social media, so that's not really hands-on with like being an Unreal, for example. And that was like a brief period of time where I actually got to like get my hands dirty and do like the work of all the people that inspire me around me, and take lessons and learn from them. And one of the things I was like really proud of that I got to walk away with was I got to contribute some level design, and never done that before. But it was so fun, and the fact that all of my coworkers were so open to teaching me, even though like initially I thought of myself as a burden. I'm like, all these people, they know how to do these things. Like, why should I be a part of it? And they're like, well, no, we're all learning together. I'm sure there's things, Keenan, you could teach us. So it was a really cool experience where I just got to learn from a bunch of people and then just share with my coworkers, and also bond with people that I had never really gotten a chance to work with before.
Oh man, I could not have expected that amazing of an answer. Oh, my heart is warmed. Thank you so much, Keenan. What a beautiful way to learn from your fellow coworkers and contribute. That's amazing. Chaohao, what about you? Anything that you can call out specifically that you've recently enjoyed or been a thumbs up on here?
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually just happened yesterday. It was the Sujatha's coffee showcase. So that was great. So for AAPI month, our Galaxy, we had a different events. So yesterday we had one where Sujatha was introducing Indian filter coffee to the whole studio. And then I was the representative of the Orlando studio. So I was essentially following her instructions and like making the filter coffee in front of an audience. And I worked at a boba shop back in college. So it's giving me like throwbacks because I used to make a lot of Vietnamese coffees for customers, and the process of making those coffees are very similar. So like it's cool to see like how some cultures are sort of related, and the rest of the team seemed to really enjoy the coffee. So I enjoyed doing that. So that was fun.
How'd it taste? Yeah, did you have some?
Yeah, I had some. Well, I didn't have some yesterday, but I practiced at home the day before, and I had some that night, and it was great. Yeah.
Love to see it.
Yeah.
I want to go to Rejess for this next question. Can you share, Rejess, some of the things that we might be doing to help hire and support the AAPI community or talent here at Iron Galaxy?
Absolutely. I mean, one, it starts kind of with our excellent recruiters, Eli and your team, and just the ways that we source candidates, how we're mindful with using tools to help us reduce and eliminate as much bias as possible through that
Mm.
sourcing process. But from, anonymizing and randomizing our testing, to blurring out names, and photos on LinkedIn when we're sourcing candidates. So I really think that's one of the biggest things we do is just try to level the playing field for as many people as possible through that recruiting process. And then of course, like once you get here, we have our employee resource groups, like Chaohao mentioned. We have an AAPI employee resource group, so you can kind of find your community. And also, if you're not AAPI, you can also learn more about the community, because we also host cool educational events to teach people about everybody's community.
I love that. Yeah, we need allies too, not just
Yeah.
folks from those communities. We need those allies as well. Rajess, I'll stay here with you just because you were just speaking too before you click that mute button again. Um, coming into games, right, from another industry, what have you identified as some things that you think that this industry could do a little bit better? Because you have fresh eyes on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we definitely have, and all of tech is dealing with like a pipeline problem, right? Like making sure that you have candidates from diverse backgrounds, and from underrepresented ethnic groups and gender minorities. So making sure that we're equipping people from the start, and teaching them and giving them the tools so that they can apply and be successful once they arrive is probably the biggest thing that as an industry in games and just tech is still trying to solve. How do you equip people with the tools before the interview process, right? What organizations can we work in? Where can we invest and volunteer, so that we are supporting up and coming developers and up and coming game devs, or whatever, artists, whatever it is that you want to do. How do we support you early, and getting you those skills so that you can become competitive in that job market?
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. I actually wanted to go to Shekhar next because I think that the games industry has a lot of people speaking up for the change. I think that the games industry has grown a lot too, and at least these topics are out there more. But are there any things that you think that the industry can do better, games just in general, or even tech?
Yeah, I think, I'd like to think, I'm pretty excited about what I've been seeing happen, I think, in the last year or two at Iron Galaxy, and I hope to see even more of it. I think, we have this, I agree with everything we just said about, especially the kind of have people equipped, ready to go from the start, and make sure they hit the ground running when they leave, when they're done with school. You just heard a whole bunch of stories from a bunch of us about how we finished school, and then it wasn't like a lot of us couldn't like work in games the next Monday. Like it was like after graduation or something, right? It's like we all went off and kind of, a bunch of us had other stories for a while before we eventually made our way around to it, or I needed further education or what have you. And so I'm excited to see us doing a lot more at the associate and entry level. I think as far as internships and, providing that training to promising students that still are going through their education path. I think I've worked at far larger companies as far as size of company, and I've never seen this many internship slots in a year, like as far as how many people were willing to take on and try to mentor and teach. And of course, not every single person like works out, for whatever reason, but like we're taking a lot of, attempts. We're taking a lot of we're trying, I think, to really just provide that extra mentorship and guidance, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's like the people doing that are the same people that could be making games, right? Like essentially like the ones that are going to teach you how to make games, like Chaohao, you talked about Dr. Carbone here, and it's like he's very busy with helping, a lot of times he's very busy helping interns be the best they can be and make sure they hit the ground running when they graduate. And that's a person where he could just be making games instead for us, right? But it's like I like to see that we're recognizing there's the multiplication effect there, the exponential effect of like, okay, him passing that knowledge to 20 people, and then those 20 people help people and so forth. So I'd like to see a lot more of that. Like I said, I've been fortunate enough to work at several game studios in my career, and this is by far the most I've seen anyone do, because it's hard to see the short-term result. It's a very long game. And so I just like to see more of that in the industry, and a lot more let's get people even at the high school level. Maybe how do we just reach out more at that level, but especially at the university level. And I think like Rejess said, like recognize the pipeline and get to a lot more diverse places and different schools and different geographic locations and backgrounds and so forth.
Yeah, I love our internship program, and I do think that it all starts with intention for me, where I think in the past some companies had like, hey, interns are going to be cheap labor to get something done, right? And with us, it really is about that teaching versus tasking. Like your seesaw starts way more on the teaching side, and then as you're here, it starts to be more tasks and things like that, right? So I do think that we don't have that kind of goal where even let's say someone doing an art test with us, those assets that they might be doing, those are not things that are going in our games or being implemented. It's a portfolio piece they get to keep and have on their own site, and that's I think a rarity in games too. A lot of that stuff is usually NDA'd when you have the test, but we here have a focus on that, and I think our internships are, the purpose or the intention behind it is to teach first, not to be like, hey, let's get cheaper labor or something like that. That's not our strategy, which I really do like the intention and how much the program has grown over even just my 2.5 years here. It's a huge amount of interns, and we're super excited about them getting exposure to Iron Galaxy. Maybe someone watching this video will be a future Iron Galaxy intern. You'll get my contact info at the end. Hit me up, please. I'm going to go back to Keenan, and I want to talk to you about a coworker that's left a considerable impression on you, or someone who you just are thrilled to work with.
Sure. The very, very obvious one would be my boss, Deej. I'm gonna say a few folks because I want to.
Please, yeah, shout them out.
Yeah, first up would be Deej. Him stopping to pick my resume out of the bunch really, gave me my shot here. The story goes, he was at work, and he was, still figuring out and setting up because it was one of his first couple weeks at IG. And at the time, recruiting was sourcing through resumes. And Deej was like, well, I think I could help out and take a peek at a few of those. And he spotted my resume out of the bunch and their specific experience, Ignite Gaming Lounge, which is a local gaming lounge to this area that he was a very fond place of. That he's like, oh, let's give this guy a shot. Let's give him a conversation because I had a really cool experience there, and I'd like to hear more about this dude's background. And if he was not, if he decided to spend his time differently that day and didn't want to source through resumes that day, I'm not sure if my resume would get pulled, because when I think about like my experience compared to other current community managers, I didn't have any traditional experience. But I'm very thankful that one day he decided to look around, and obviously the surrounding people that took me through that recruitment process, all thanks to them as well, because they're all the stepping stones that got me here. But very thankful for him.
Well, and I just want to say one thing before you shout out more people. I think that something that I'd like to share with folks is that, like, you never know. There is a little element of luck. Like, that person has to be looking at interview or looking at resumes that day. So there's an element of luck of you finding that job post on Twitter that day or LinkedIn, right? So just make sure that your materials, your resume, your portfolio are ready to go all the time, that you're always updating them, because you never know when that right opportunity is going to strike. And if you wait 4 days to get everything ready, you could be 50 to 70 more resumes deep in their process, and someone might get into the process before you. But please give some more shout outs, Keenan. Who else has had an impact on you?
Timing is very important, and also catering to make sure all the content on your resume is actually applicable. I made sure to have Ignite at the top of my resume. Like, this is the best thing I have to offer, and I hope this gives me a shot. But the next two people would be Adam Hart and Noah Zasso. I specifically communicated with them a lot during the project of Rumbleverse, and I really appreciated their respect of trying to keep me in the loop of all of their thoughts, ideas, and I mean, generally the design team and the QA team as a whole just kept me in the loop of so many conversations. But specifically those two, they entertained side conversations whenever I was interested, because I wanted to know more about the product, the game that we were providing for our customers. And, they could have fully focused on their jobs, and they could have let me experiment to figure out the game on my own. But they're like, we want Keenan to understand this game similar to us, so he knows how to communicate best with our players, and I'm forever thankful for that. So yeah, and then QA team as a whole would be my final rounding out point. I spoke with them almost on a daily basis, so yeah.
Always love to QA. They're fantastic. Mad love to QA. A lot of people come up through QA. What about you, Chaohao? Any shout outs to give to team members that have left an impression?
Yeah, I would like to shout out to all of my managers. So starting from Ramon, he was my manager at the very beginning. And then it was Kevin Knight, who's no longer with IG, but he's a great manager, and currently Chris Kaiser. They're all great managers. I learned a great ton of stuff, either like soft or hard skills from them. And yeah, And other than those people, I would also like to shout out to my coworker Andrew. He's always the one that asked me like, "Hey, what you're gonna have for lunch?" He's always introducing me to like different restaurants around the downtown office, and I'm a big foodie, so it's great to explore different restaurants. So yeah.
I was gonna say I don't know how often managers get shout outs. So one, it's cool to hear that, or you're angling for a promotion. I don't know. Could be one.
I did learn a great ton from them, so I do appreciate them. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you're just letting me say it's a great place to work, and then I bring up the slide again,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, that's what I. That's what I do. Oh man, Shekhar, any one here who's left a considerable impression on you?
Yeah, I mean, so many, right? Like, I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
I could do like Keenan and just go all day. I've had the fortune to work with a lot of folks here. Like I said, I've been here a few years now. I've gotten to be in that loop that Keenan talked about, where I get to like look at resumes and think about who we want to bring in for what positions, and help meet a lot, met a lot of folks that way. And so I think I could go all day. I guess um I think one name that stands out is actually our other co-CEO. I mentioned one of our co-CEOs, but I think our other, Chelsea Blasco, I would definitely call out, that's someone I didn't have. I mentioned I had a whole bunch of background with a whole bunch of folks here, and that might seem like the easy mode cheat code to get in, but for most of my time at the company, I've reported to Chelsea. I don't anymore, but for most of my time I did. And and so we were basically strangers. We met a couple of times, but basically didn't know each other. But I think one, as far as how to onboard a person, build trust with them, build a relationship, delegate, and empower. I was impressed at her skills in that regard, and her immediate willingness and ability to sort of just trust in me. And like I said, basically a stranger coming in and just assuming I'll figure it out, just keep throwing more and more my way and empowering me to handle and manage a lot. And so it was a huge growth opportunity, just working for those first couple of years as I joined the company. And I'd been here 6 months, and all of a sudden we all had to go home because of lockdown and the pandemic, and so helping manage the company through that. Again, Chelsea gave me a lot of she empowered me a lot to help manage us through that crisis and through that time. So I think that's someone that I was very impressed by, as far as like had no reason to trust me or think that I should know how to do all that I was being given to do, but definitely took that leap of faith. And I've always been impressed by her faith in people. I'm going to call it, like, people is our number one value here of our company values, man, she talks, she walks the walk. She doesn't just talk the talk, for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I think the next thing I want to jump to, Rejess, do you have any wisdom that you can share with someone struggling with self-doubt or imposter syndrome? Because that's a huge thing when you're trying to break into games, feeling like you belong there too. Can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest one is just try to push through, right? So things don't have to be perfect, they have to be done. And at Iron Galaxy, we're really good at giving feedback. Shekhar's on the call. Shekhar was definitely instrumental in helping me like learn. I don't have to submit a perfect proposal the first time, right? The idea is for me to get feedback from my support system, so my managers, my stakeholders, whoever they may be, but getting y'all a draft early, and then you can help me give me feedback and make changes on it. And so I think the thing for me that I've learned with imposter syndrome is that once you feel it, then you can remind yourself that you're in a familiar space. So if you've ever had imposter syndrome about anything in life, and you've pushed past it, when you see it come up again and you see it arise again, you feel it, okay, then you can get through it because you've done it before. And so whatever pushed you to get through it before, remember that, and that it'll be okay. You'll push through, and just, get it done and just try. And usually if you just try your best, you'll be all right.
I loved hearing that. Keenan, do you have anything to share about anyone about struggling with imposter syndrome or being in those
Yeah.
communities?
I'm glad you pulled me for this one, because I was gonna raise my hand if you didn't. First, I would like Google and YouTube what imposter syndrome is. I didn't know what it was until like maybe like I don't know, like 6 years ago or something. My wife gives like a presentation to her dance team about it. It's like an hour and a half long conversation,
Wow.
strictly like on those two words. And I got to sit through one of those, and I was like, man, I didn't fully understand the weight of like what these words mean. So first, fully understanding what imposter syndrome is, and then recognizing it is like the first step of maybe overcoming something, and also recognizing that plenty of other people go through it too. Probably everyone. I'm sure there are some super confident folks out there, but I'd imagine there's a lot of people that experience and feel it. But I'd encourage you to think about maybe someone that you look up to in your life, whether that's game industry related or just like, a family member that's like, oh, that cool uncle, whatever. Think about how they probably had imposter syndrome in their personal life on
Mhm.
something that they now feel confident about. And if you're feeling up to it, maybe have a conversation with how they develop that confidence in that subject matter or whatever. Or think about other people in your circle or just the internet that you are maybe interested in having a conversation with, and just learn about how they overcame whatever struggle, because everyone's had one. It's just you choosing to recognize that this is a struggle that I'm interested in overcoming because this is something that you care about.
Keenan, I was gonna say, even Michael Jordan misses a shot. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, like, everyone struggles with it, all of that. But I trust Michael indefinitely to save the planet or defeat aliens if they, try and defeat us at basketball.
All trust
So,
in Michael.
all trust in Mike. I'm gonna. I have more questions that I want to ask, but I'm gonna save them for the end. And then, of course, if you're watching and you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. But what I'm going to do now is share some slides real quick, and this is all around some advice and help to get hired. So give me just 1 second here, and I will share my screen again. Bam. All right. Quick attention, the following slides feature advice to help you get hired. Keep in mind that each interview process is unique, different, custom tailored to that company, right? We encourage you to be your true authentic self, talk with your peers and mentors, and follow your instincts as you apply. But here's some things that me as a recruiter, I think can go a long way to help you out. So some general advice: applying for the job that you're looking at on the official company website. Many aggregation spots, be it LinkedIn, be it Indeed, or many other popular websites, can oftentimes miss details of the job post that we have either on our internal board or on our company website, because they might not have all the same fields. They also might present information that is required for their website that we don't post on our own. So just make sure that you are getting all the information from the company website itself. Read that job description and read it again, because that job description is your cheat sheet on how to get the job. So read it a bunch. Please read all the qualifications there. The next big thing I want to share is I don't think that you should wait to get feedback further into your interview process or when you've received that rejection. So you have to consider the audience, and you have to consider the volume of applications that may be coming through. So when someone asks you in a call, do you have any feedback? Or sorry, do you have any questions, at the end? I definitely think you should ask for feedback on the interview. The main reason is, that interviewer could have taken amazing notes on your process, but you could be one of many people interviewing, right? And 2 weeks later, there's extremely less context on what they thought that you could potentially work on, or some things they'd like to see from you. And this is a way that you can unlock and learn some valuable things to help you get that next job. Any percentage points are going to help you. Even if you learn 1% information, it's going to help you. Please don't wait for your, follow-up email. Ask for feedback on your calls for your interviews, please. And kind of in line with that, I think a good question you can ask during interviews, and this is for folks that are more leads, managers, and senior types: do you have any concerns about me in this role? Because 2 things can happen from this question, and you can remix these words to make it your own. Do you have any concerns about my fit? Do you have any, things that would prevent me from getting this job, right? Like, you can remix it into your own words. But I think 2 things can happen from this question. Do you have any concerns about me in this role? One, you'll have an experience or some past thing that you've done that you can draw on and smooth over that concern and say, hey, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that concern. This is a time that I did that, or this is a time that I had experience in that, atmosphere of that. Or you'll learn the thing that you need to add on and go get that Google Coursera or that certification or whatever it is, or work with your peers and partners to get that experience. So I think that that's a good interview question. Next up, here's some ways to stand out. Cover letters and portfolios. So cover letters are brief narratives that paint a picture of why your experience is a fit for the role, right? If your resume is over here on one side and your job description is on the other, that cover letter should be kind of that middle point between them, connecting them. So I think a smart tactic is to take some experience that you have on your resume and a bullet point from the job description and weave a paragraph or weave some information around why what you've done in your past makes it undeniable that you're going to be able to do that at the job. But here's some statistics for you. Polls show that only 26% of resume reviewers read the full cover letter, right? But 67% of those same reviewers responded that the extra effort is what drove them to review the candidate. So I want you to think about the two audiences that you're going to be interacting with your portfolio, your resume, all the things you submit. Let's say there's 400 applicants for a role. When you're going from 400 to 40 that are fully reviewed, you are going through the keyword search, the algorithm, the talent professionals, and all of that, right? So your first part of your materials should appeal to that one audience that's reading things that is the recruiting side of things. And of course, the algorithm, right? So keywords, like if you're applying for an engineer role, have your languages on there, have your engines, all that stuff. But the second audience you're going through is going to be the actual department you're applying for. If you're applying to an engineering role, it's going to be the engineers. If you're applying to a art role, it's going to be the artists, right? So just keep in mind the audiences, and those cover letters are what get you from the 40 people that are fully reviewed, right? So 400 to 40 is going to be talent acquisition folks, recruiters, HR professionals in the algorithm. Going from 40 people that are fully reviewed to maybe 6 that actually interview, that's going to be your cover letter, your portfolio, and making sure all of your materials appeal to that audience too, right? The group or the department that you're trying to join. And I think that your cover letter is the thing that can separate you from other candidates. And so it's really important to include one. In fact, I've seen people say like, hey, this person couldn't take the time to write a cover letter. They clearly don't want this job, right? We can tell when you want any job versus our job. And the cover letter is a great way to explain maybe if your experience doesn't necessarily ring out that you're a fit for the role, your cover letter can illustrate why you want to go from this industry into another industry potential. So please keep that in mind. Cover letters are key. When it comes to portfolios, we think you should show your work, screenshots of your backend, your paper prototypes, reference materials, call out specifically what you did, what other people on your team did. Including that team size and the time constraints gives a lot of context so we can understand maybe what you contributed to this project, right? When you're talking about portfolio pieces, please, and this is like things that you might do for a test, just focus on the actual project that they've asked you to do. I've seen people get in the weeds, and this is funny because there's a test that we have where someone maybe put too much foliage in the background because they were trying to show all the things they can do rather than focusing on the thing we had asked them to do. So when you're given a test, don't worry about the bonus elements. Spend all your time and invest everything in the actual thing they've asked you to do rather than trying to blow them away with all this extra, things that are a part of your skill set. Focus on the test at hand and try your best to invest all your time that you have for a test in what they've asked you to do. And then I think when it comes to your portfolios, we don't want appetizers. What I mean by that is put your meal first. So oftentimes I see people, whether it's their reel or their portfolio, put their thing that they did most recently at the end to be kind of like a grand finale, but you can't guarantee that someone's going to get to minute, 2 of your reel, right? Or you can't guarantee that they're going to scroll all the way down on your page or click to that area. So you need to be all killer, no filler, put your best content up front. Don't just have a static image of whatever the game project is. Put a GIF, put a video that auto plays. You can't guarantee that the audience, because you have to think, if a resume reviewer is looking at 50 resumes in an hour or more, right? You need to find a way to stand out. And when you make it easy on the audience to understand all the great things you can do, you're going to do yourself a favor. So that's my portfolio advice there. And now I'd like to kick it back to the Q&A here, and we can do some more questions and all of that. So I'm seeing here, we've got just about 20 minutes left on our time. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I did see one from Ethan. do you have any recommendations on how to structure cover letters and what to focus on in them? So I covered that a little bit, but Ethan, I can dive deeper too. I feel, and then the rest of the question from Ethan, I feel they're what I struggle with most in applications. I'm not sure what approach to take. So I took up a lot of the airspace on cover letters so far. Shekhar, do you have any thoughts or advice on cover letters off the top of your head?
I think you hit it actually really well in that last slide. I think, keep it, I think one, I think I've heard this advice from you, Eli, in the past is, there could be a position like, Keenan, you talked about, hey, who knows the timing on how did you get picked out of a pile of resumes, right? I think, that's talking about how we get a lot. I think especially when I talked earlier about associate level and intern level and things like that, you get, we do tend to get, hundreds sometimes of applications in some of those roles, as Eli, and you have to look at all of them. So, thank you and your team, by the way. So, I think keeping it brief, sharp, to the point, concise, I think, highlighting the skills, highlighting the work experience real quickly, or the educational experience, I think things that you think would be relevant. Like Keenan talked about putting the Ignite Lounge at the top because he knew that was the most relevant thing. And I think whether that's chronologically correct or not, in the cover letter, it really doesn't matter. I think I think really call out like, hey, I've done a bunch of game jams or student projects, as teams of 5 building this and that. We built a game in UE and or Unity, and here's where we did, and here's where you can play it. Here's a link, real quick. That's the stuff we need to know. We don't need to know that you play guitar for fun on the side as a hobby, or any of that other stuff. Like, I think that's so we could have that chat later, kind of thing.
Yeah, I really agree. And I think that you should always, and this kind of goes into resumes too, but can support your cover letter here. I think that whatever role you're applying for should be the headline, right, on your resume in some way, shape, or form, right? And everything on that resume should be a pillar supporting that headline, right? So there's plenty of people who, let's say they're applying for engineering, but also they're a photographer and they do podcasting or something like that, right? And the keyword search isn't really being helped when it's things like GarageBand or things like Photoshop, right? Because those aren't necessarily tools that an engineer might use in their day-to-day work, right? So I do think it's best to tailor your resume specifically to the jobs you're applying to. And for instance, when I was applying for community management roles, I didn't put like Elijah Montoya community manager. I put community engagement expert because I knew I was trying to highlight maybe some more of the keywords they might be looking for when they were, scanning through different resumes. So I think you're definitely correct there, Shekhar, on a lot of those points. Keeping it quick, keeping it concise. A common thing I think, right, is that people spend a lot of that cover letter real estate on their passion and love of games, right? And a lot of us have very similar stories where we started with it, or it's something that like my cousins, them playing Super Nintendo is what got me into it. Shekhar, your pop's getting you into it, right? All this stuff. So don't spend as much time on the like huge passion for game story and spend time on the things that make you a fit for the role. But yeah, it's great to have that piece in there too about like why you love games, because that can highlight things too and can help you too. But just don't spend all of your real estate on the when I was 5, my grandpa got me a Game Boy from the pawn shop kind of thing, right? Like that's that's important too, but we also want to see the skills and how you're a fit for the role, at least at that phase of the pipeline.
Thanks.
Cool,
I was
cool.
gonna chime
Please.
in and add on my resume. I actually have a section that says relevant experience. So like I just did, I tell y'all all the time, break the rules. There are no rules. Do what you want. Like I put a relevant experience section so that people could understand what experience that I had was relevant to the DEI roles that I was applying for versus what was my current role if it wasn't, directly related. But if I had any type of other outside community experience, volunteer experience, anything that was related that I was doing, I kind of put in that section. So there's no, rules to these resume formats. You have to format it and do what's best and works best for your unique situation. And then I can throw another question out at you. Eli, it says, as a software engineer of 2 years, but no gaming experience, will I have to take an internship to get in the door, or is there going to be a role for me? What should I focus on in the meantime, C++ or specific engines?
Oh man, we should definitely talk. I have an entire C++ resource kit that can arm you to pass our tests, but we do have associate software engineer positions open. We've had people who've graduated who've come into our internships and then after a successful 3-month internship have converted into full-time. So there have been unique scenarios. So kind of as Rejess was saying, there necessarily aren't rules. There's going to be times where we have projects that allow us to bring on more, or there's going to be things that adjust in our calendar. But I would say that we do have associate software engineer roles open right now on the website. But if you're curious about C++, it hasn't been out of the normal for someone to initially interview with us, do the tech screen, and we say, all right, we think that this person's going to be a fit, but give them then, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even more time to go through our engineering resource kit and then ramp themselves up and get ready for our C++ and debugging tests. So we want to set you up for success on that front. And I think the main thing that we're looking for is someone with a foundational cake of engineering skills, that problem solving, that the team mentality and all of that. And then we can give you the frosting on that cake, right? Right. So foundational cake of engineering skills, the frosting is the game engine, or going from one language to another, all that stuff. We have plenty of educational tools that kind of Rejess, or we've talked about with our internships too, right? So we're really adept at that here, I would say. But yeah, definitely please get my contact information. I'll put that up here before we jump out, and I can send you that resource kit, and it'll arm you to get a job, not just with us, but anywhere in games. So happy to support and help you.
And
Any
then
other questions?
Yeah, we had one come into the parking lot ahead of time, and it said, what if you have years of professional creative skills, just not in gaming? Where's a good place to start? It came in anonymous. So yeah, someone take it there. I would also add, if you're a creative and you're an artist, you can consider art, but there's also just other roles. You can consider QA. There is social media manager. So I guess it depends on what type of creative skills you have. But I know
Yeah,
Keenan uses a
yeah,
lot of his creative skills.
Yeah, I wanna chime in here. And I almost anonymous person, if you're open to sharing anonymous what kind of creative skills you have, I'd love to like try to provide more insider feedback. But personally, my creative skill on the side is I'm a dancer and a choreographer as well, and I've kind of like used those experiences on trying to like plug myself on social media to learn more about social media, and that I think kind of inched my way towards understanding how to communicate with like gaming communities. So dance is not games, but dance in my mind is like in the realm of games because there's like emotes and there's blah blah blah, and there's a lot of different creative spaces around games that do connect with games. I'm sure you know of plenty of games that have emotes where, guess what, that probably came from a choreographer or someone on TikTok or someone on something, right? So depending on the creative skill, look to see what games are featuring maybe that creative skill, and then try to do some research around that because maybe that's like your place in games.
I wonder what that job title would be, Keenan. Like dance dance choreographer. Like if someone's searching for that job, like
Literally, my
that'd be
first
amazing.
month at IG, I was like, "Hey, everyone, I dance, by the way. So if anyone wants any emails for Rumbleverse, just let me know." Like that's how I started pitching myself, and I actually got to help and contribute to a few, which is the coolest experience ever. Because it was like that was like a bucket list life goal. Like I would love to have choreography in a video game, and I partially got my way there, which is really cool. All thanks to IG being open to the conversation. So kudos to IG.
I just love to see you in a mocap suit. Get things going.
I'm waiting for one of these open spaces. It's gonna be like mocap studio. Here we go, Keenan hopping in.
Oh, this is a good question. What do game ideas ever come from within the studio, and what does that look like? I know you guys have Rumbleverse, but there's also a lot of ports support. So ports/support. So what is the balance as a game studio? Like how much original content versus outside work? I think this is a good Shekhar question.
Hello, thank you. That's a great question. Well, I think the second part is how much of one type versus the other. It's constantly changing. It kind of ebbs and flows, depending on our a lot of the projects we pick is based on, is it interesting, is it a good fit for us, and who's free to work on it. Like those are all kind of variables we have to think about as far as like when evaluating potential partnerships and working with other companies on things. I think though that to answer the question, do ideas come from within? Absolutely. So Rumbleverse itself was our most recent original IP. That was an internal idea, from a group of people, and kind of it just was like conversation over beers or something like that is the story, and it kind of just evolved and morphed from there. And it was like, wait, we kind of have tech that does this, and we have an engine that does this, and we have we have a lot of fighting game experience that does that, and like how do we marry all this stuff together? And that was kind of, I think, the genesis, if I remember right. So that definitely came from within. We also periodically, I think like a lot of game studios actually, we will do from time to time like Keenan mentioned, game jams, and there was a lot of cool creative stuff that we got to, we had a cool Zoom event where everyone in the company could just kind of like watch the quick demos and see like videos of all those game demos in action. And it was super creative. It was super like stuff all over there. And there was a few where I was definitely like, oh, that could easily be like an actual game we make, right? Like it's if the stars ever align and we have the right folks to do it, like that could be a full out game. We've done like pitch jams, or I forget the word we've called it, but basically like, to come up with that PowerPoint slide or that one
Pitch
pager
deck,
or that
yeah,
elevator
yeah.
pitch that kind of talks about what would this game be like. And you can see like what people are playing and where their influences are and what their favorite sort of genres are and game types are, kind of shining through in some of those too, for sure. But it's interesting to see some folks that are not, let's say, a game designer really thinking like a game designer and really thinking about like mechanics and how would this work moment to moment and how does it feel and like what would the scope of the production be like. Is it a giant open world like Elden Ring, which is going to need like a whole lot of people, or Hogwarts Legacy, where it's going to need a whole lot of people to build? Or is it like Wordle that probably, I'm going to guess, doesn't have like 600 people to make that game work every day, right? And so it's like they're thinking about scope and all this cool production stuff too. So yeah, it's neat to see that stuff come from within for sure.
I was gonna say, I
Great info
think
to share.
Dive Kick was an internal
Yep.
idea as well. So that turned out some of our employees had
Yep.
that idea and brought that to the company, and then that became an actual game.
There were two questions, Rejess, one from Samuel, one from Austin, that almost kind of tie together in a way that I kind of want to riff on here. One of them was, thanks a lot for the session. You're very welcome, Samuel. You talked a lot about what to do to help your chances to get into games, and a little bit of not what to do in of the cover letter section, right? Anything that's an immediate turnoff for a potential hire. So I can give some information on this, but the other question was, I have tons of experience, but nothing professional. I feel confident in just about any role. What should I shoot for? So the way that I wanted to tie these two together is what I think is a turnoff and what you should shoot for. Basically, don't apply for every open role at a company. Be specific about what you apply for. So to Austin, what I would say first, maybe pick two things that you think that you would enjoy doing at that company and aim for those two. But if you think you could do production and art and design and engineering, right? I think that the hiring team can get some mixed messages from you if you've applied to everything that's open, right? And I will tell you, there are people who have applied to every open role we have all the time, right? And so I don't know if that puts you in the best position to succeed, because we'll ask, did you read the qualifications for this role? And we'll wonder, like how serious are you about joining this company, right? Because for us, I think when you apply to every open role that a company has, I think that that's a mistake, right? But as Rejess said, there are no rules, right? Break the rules. You have to get on their radar somehow, right? But I think that there are more strategic and better ways to do it. You can pick those handful of roles that you think that you are maybe one or two steps close to, or that could be possibly a fit. Then you can reach out to the recruiters there and say, hey, here's my experience. Do you think there's a fit? Can you have the hiring manager or someone review my resume? But I think that you can go overboard by applying to too many open roles. And then to Austin, I would say, I would try and pick two that you think that are going to scratch that itch for you the most, or that you're going to have the most passion about. But it can be hard when you have experience. If you're in the indie space, you're doing, your own personal projects. When you've done every part of game dev, it can be hard to pick a lane. But I do think, at the AAA levels, there is specifics. You're going to be deployed to a specific team, and you'll be a part of a specific, either design or art or engineering team. So I would advise trying to pick those two. It can be hard to pick those two, right? But in school, sometimes you have to pick a major, right? you have to choose a path. So we will guide you on the path, but also you could do engineering for many years and then pivot into design later in your career, right? Like that's people have had that experience. Does anyone else have anything to share on the, when you have so many skills, how do you pick a lane, or how do you go for a specific role?
Man, don't use the same resume at least. If you're gonna shoot your, if you're gonna shoot your shot at a lot of different roles, have different resumes, depending, for that role or discipline or subset, whatever. You can kind of group them together. Like DEI roles are all DEI roles. One might be a manager, one might be a lead, one might be just for employee resource groups, but they're still all bucketed in DEI. I have other skills that I could have apply for other jobs with, but then I wouldn't use a DEI focused resume for that. So if you're going to apply for different stuff, at least switch the resume up and make sure you're tailoring it to that particular type of role.
If I can add to that, I think that's a great piece of advice there. And I think to tell, we talked about cover letters a few minutes ago. That's, since that's more, there's more adjectives and verbs there, than just like stating bullets and facts like a resume has, a lot of nouns and things. I think, I think definitely you don't want to be copying and pasting cover letter and just using the same one over and over and over again. I think it's already been said, but like really tailor that to the, while we've said keep it to a couple of paragraphs, keep it concise and quick, still make sure it's tailored to the specific role in question and why, or have us see really easily and quickly like why you're a good fit for that and why you're passionate about that.
Fully agree. 10 out of 10 agree. 20 out of 10 agree even, Shekhar. So I think that gets us through all the questions. I'm going to share screen again so you can get the contact information. So the apply slide is up again. So give me just a moment here. But while I'm doing that, Chaohao, I asked you before this to put together some maybe engineer resource links. So if you wouldn't mind throwing them here in the chat, I can grab them here in a second too if you don't have access to them. But that would be great to see that from you. And then I'm going to just share our slides one more time here so that you can all get the contact information from our recruiters as well.
And Eli, we did have one question. It's a recruiter question, so it's perfect for you to close out on. And it says, do recruiters actually keep a list of people who applied but didn't make the cut? It's something I see in a lot of rejection emails, but it doesn't sound like they'd ever use it.
Well, we actually don't have to use or create a list like that because there's something called an applicant tracking system. So most of the companies you're going to apply to are going to have something like this. There's many popular ones out there. There's Greenhouse. You can look up. There's a lot of applicant tracking systems. But yeah, that's how we kind of see folks, right? And we put notes in there after interview rounds. And even with us, we have a thing where with our engineering candidates, sometimes someone won't pass the test, but we'll send them the resource kit that I had mentioned earlier in this conversation. And they've taken on the resource kit and they've got a job with us in the future, maybe 3 to 6 months down the line. I can think of 2 people who've done that in my tenure here. So we do retain the information. And we have access to your resume. We can see interview feedback and all of that, and then we're able to find people as far back as maybe 2016 when we started using this system, and we can understand what happened in their interview rounds. And there's plenty of times where someone tried maybe 2-3 years ago and they come back, and we're excited to speak with them again because sometimes it's awesome. It's a great person fit, right? But just the skills just aren't quite there yet, and we try and give some feedback and some tools for them to get there. It's not going to be the same experience at every company, but I have seen people return. But also that takes a little bit of bravery and confidence to reach out to a place that you got a rejection from again and to try again. So just for even having that, that I guess that pick up yourself by the bootstraps and go for it again attitude, I think is good, and a company will definitely understand that you are really interested in their job. All right, well, thank you so much. I think that brings us to the end here. I wanted to give a shout out to Rick for creating the slides. I wanted to thank so much Shekhar, Chaohao, Keenan, Rejess for being a part of this. It's going to live on our channels and YouTubes in the future and all of that. Please connect with us. Please apply. This does not have to be the only time we engage. I'd be happy to do resume reviews, portfolio reviews for anyone who's in attendance here. Happy to help you out. Please reach out, and thank you so much. Everyone have a great day. This has been fantastic. Great questions as well. But yeah, shout out to everyone who's a part of the process. You're great. Have a good one. Bye-bye.